Hey everyone, it's Miss Usaro, and I just wanted to speak to you today a little bit about the attributes of Greek drama. So, the important thing to note here is about Oedipus Rex. It was written in 459 BC, so this literature is over 2,500 years old, and Aristotle called Oedipus Rex the greatest tragedy that was ever written. And Rex itself means king. Oedipus is already the king of Thebes by the time that we open up this particular tragedy. So he's already gone through the backstory. We're starting where he's the king, and there's a plague that has befallen Thebes, and that's the tragedy that coming is about, like learning how he came to the throne and the inevitable fall. So the backstory has already occurred, and we're going to find it and by hearing bits and pieces of him telling his story in the play and it going kind of backwards, and we it unfolds in a backwards type of manner. So it starts in the present, and as we get that information it goes back. So but part of the main attributes of the Greek drama comes from Aristotle's Poetics and how he defines tragedy in Poetics. So there's six main component parts, and then there are seven characteristics. So we're going to start with the six main component parts, listed here in order from most important to least important. So plot is the most important, then character, thought, diction, melody, and spectacle. So to understand, everybody already knew the plot of Oedipus Rex when they went to go see the play. Everybody knew the plot. That's not what he means by most important. What he means by most important is like this chart right here, is that it has this perfect plot diagram where you have the exposition, the rising action, the climax, falling action, and the resolution. That it has to be perfect because that's what creates the engagement. If you don't have this perfect plot, then you're not going to be able to, have people be engaged in the story in and of itself. So then it comes to the seven, then there's character. You have to have characters who are good and relatable. You want these people who, if they're not good characters, then you're not going to care about what happens to them, and you're not going to care if something bad happens to them. Like, you want people who you could actually care about. Thought, diction, melody, and spectacle. So melody and spectacle. So thought, it should be provoking. It should be provoking and something that you can mentally connect to. It should be intelligent. Diction is the type of language. Melody is also related to language, not in the sense that it's musical. There is music. There's music in tragedies, but what he means by melody is that the language has a rhythm and a pattern to it. So if you notice while you're reading, first of all, like, it's meant to be performed, but if you notice that while you're reading, that it's actually they're in stanzas, and like you have a chorus, and the chorus is not in the sense of like a choir, but they speak chorally, meaning, and it's usually divisible by eight. So you usually have 8 or 16 people that are men that are in the chorus, and they will speak chorally. So the melody is related to the rhythm of the language and like the choral speaking. And then finally, spectacle. Spectacle is the least important, but nonetheless it makes the list. So what is spectacle? Spectacle would be like the action as far as like what is like masks and costuming and different things that happen like on the stage. So you don't want to have too much because then it becomes ridiculous, and like you don't want it to be comedic, but you also need to have some in order to keep people engaged. So then there's seven characteristics within those six component parts. It's mimetic, first of all. Imitation in particular. So if you look at the root word here, which means that it must imitate real life. It needs to have like imitation of real world in art, real world in literature. It needs to be something that people can actually relate to. Otherwise, nobody's going to care. It's not going to be realistic enough to be sad. It is serious. So obviously it's a tragedy, so that it's specifically not a comedy, but more than that, that it's serious enough where people would take it to consideration, that it's something that obviously that it ends in a sadness, that there's a validity behind it. It tells a full story of an appropriate length. So what he means by that is like it either falls in 3 or 5 acts generally. It contains rhythm and harmony. That's kind of along with what I was talking about before with melody. It is performed um, rather than narrow. Oh, let me go back with the rhythm and harmony. They occur in different combinations in different parts of the tragedy. So if you take note as the action in the beginning of the play, you'll notice that there's very long speeches by Oedipus, very long speeches by the priest. So the exposition is just it just takes more time. But then, whereas when you're getting into the climax, you're going to notice a stickomythia, which is a quick back and forth between characters, like, and that rhythm and harmony kind of creates suspense, and that's what he means by that. Then it's performed rather than narrated. Of course, as you guys have always learned, plays are meant to be watched. It's not meant to be told, it's meant to be watched. And finally, it arouses feelings of pity and fear and then purges these feelings through catharsis. So that's where I'm going to go next. Okay. As far as what is catharsis. So, catharsis is an incredibly important aspect of Greek tragedy and something that Aristotle really valued. So, and when you're watching these plays, it should have pity, fear. You should feel for these characters. You should feel for this plot. You should feel for this scenario. So much so that by the end of it, you should be weeping, or you should actually feel a sadness and that. So when you're walking out of the play, like, you've released all of those emotions. So the theory behind catharsis is that the audience kind of resolves their own emotions by going to the play. And the best way I can explain it is thinking about it in terms of exercise. So we're taught that to exercise our body, we need to lift weights or do body weight exercises, strengthening our muscles, but then we also need to do cardiovascular exercise to strengthen our aerobic and anaerobic systems. These two parts together create a healthy physical body. Then if you want to exercise your mind, you read, you try to do puzzles, or you learn new words, and you do things to make your mind work a little bit harder. It's that area of like of just enough challenge where you can grow. The Greeks felt the same way about emotions, and that was catharsis. So, for your daily life, you're not supposed to be creating these great big emotions. And then culturally, it kind of hasn't changed. Think about this: like, with somebody that you're like acquaintances with, "Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm good, thanks. Oh, I'm okay, thanks." Right? That's like the general back and forth. You don't say, "Oh, I'm devastated. I'm horrified. These things are awful." They're like, "Oh, whoa, that's too much information. Yikes, you make people uncomfortable," right? They don't, unless it's obviously somebody very close to you, but like a general acquaintance, like we don't release all of these emotions into our general public, general daily life. And that's to the Greeks. It was the same thing. What you did, that's where you went to the play. You went to the play and you cried, you wept, you for these characters, so that by the time you walked out, you felt a little bit better. You exercised your own emotions by going through the different emotions. Then I'm going to show you a couple of images here of the Greek amphitheater. You would have like 15,000 people come to the plays, especially during the Dionysian times, like when they valued the art and culture so heavily. Like, all the cool kids were doing it. Everybody went to go see the tragedies. Same thing, another image of the and then you have the chorus. Okay, so the chorus, like I was saying before, they usually functioned in dividends of um, like between like 8 and 16, more or less. People, they were men. They were performed by men, and they would speak chorally. They functioned in a couple of ways. It was kind of weird how the chorus functions, and you have to really just go based on context of what the chorus is, based on context of what's happening in the play at the time. Sometimes the chorus functioned as the general public. Sometimes the chorus functioned as the audience, like breaking the fourth wall. Sometimes the chorus functioned as like a one person, even though it was chorally speaking, going back and forth with the main characters. It really depended, but it's meant to provoke conversation between, like, initiate the dialogue with whomever they're speaking with. So we're supposed to hear it. And then the chorus was sometimes subdivided into, it was often subdivided into strophe and antistrophe. So strophe, music movement of the classical Greek chorus while turning from one side to the other of the orchestra, and then the antistrophe would be the other returning way. So, like, for example, the strophe might move to the right because you're showing one side of something perspective, and then antistrophe would physically move to the left because you're showing the other perspective. And this was the main aspects of Greek drama, and that's how the chorus would show division within themselves. So maybe they had differing opinions, and that was part of the dialogue. Then, moving further along, there's appositive phrases, lots of appositive phrases within Greek text. So what the appositive phrases are, it gives more information about a noun, and they're used as like noun clauses that are separated between, like, noun phrases rather, that are separated in between commas. So like Miss Fusaro, comma, um, leader of the free world, comma, is the greatest teacher that whoever lived. Okay, so the what comes in between is the appositive. Okay, or you could do it in another way: the best teacher who ever lived, comma, Miss Fusaro, comma, is also the most beautiful woman in existence. Okay. And you see, like, within the comma, I'm being silly, of course, but within the commas, that's what functions in the appositives. And it's important when we're reading the play, because they're going to use a lot of different names, especially when it comes to Apollo, or when it comes to Oedipus himself. So understanding that these appositives are actually noun descriptors of these main characters, it helps us get a better idea of what the perspective is of the speaker. And then finally, the next biggest important aspect of Greek tragedy is dramatic irony. And dramatic irony is so incredibly important, because this is the main point. This is why you went to the play already knowing the plot, because you know what's going to happen. You know what's going on, but the character doesn't, and you're watching it unfold. So that's where the sadness occurs, because you want to try to stop the scenario because you care about the character, you care about the situation. That's what makes it dramatic irony, but you can't do anything because you're the audience member. If you have any questions, please send me an email. Thank you so much for your attention.